For a few years now, I've wanted to travel this road right here. What road is this, you might ask? Well, this is the Natchez Trace Parkway. You're asking me, what is the Natchez Trace? Well, it's a trail that's now a two-lane road that's been around for over 2,000 years, being used by various people from Indians, explorers, slave traders, and Civil War troops. Today it's a national park, and probably one of, if not the longest, one. The trace starts in Natchez, Mississippi, just the other side of those woods there, and ends in Nashville, Tennessee, 444 miles that way. What I plan on doing is starting here today in Natchez and traveling north, stopping at every little nook, cranny, and other various roadside stops along the way, weather permitting. And I'm taking you along the journey. I plan to make it to Tishomingo State Park in the northeast corner of Mississippi in a few days. I'll head home after that and continue the journey from that stopping point in a few weeks. Now I'm going to camp out at each of the free roadside campsites along the way to get the full experience, if you will. I'll get to more in the history of the trace as we go along the way. What I plan on doing is video documenting my journey in sections of each day. One day might have 2 or 3 videos, where other days might have 3 or 4. So let's get started on my journey up the Natchez Trace Parkway. So this is the Elizabeth Female Academy. We're outside of Washington, Mississippi, which was the first capital of Mississippi. The academy opened in 1818 as the first institution of higher learning for women in the United States. When the capital was moved to Jackson in 1822, the town of Washington and the attendance of the town began to decline. So the school closed down in 1845. And unfortunately, in 1870, a fire destroyed the school, except for this one wall that's left today. The trace started as an Indian trail that was later used by the Europeans in the late 1700s. Before the invention of steamboats, when goods went down the Mississippi River, once they got to their destination, either in Natchez or New Orleans, they were basically sold for scrap because they had no way to get the boats back up the Mississippi River. So once they got to Natchez and they dismantled their boats, they started walking back to their destination. Now, like I said before, the trail, in one form or another, ended up in Ohio, I believe. Now, the trace itself is not exactly the trail. There are places and parts that is not the original spots, but there's places like this right here, the old trace, where you can see this is the original trace itself right here. These sections are what's known as a sunken trace. The closer you get to the Mississippi River, the soil is very sandy. So from time and time and time of all the travelers and explorers and traders and Civil War troops, the trace is actually sunken into the ground, as you can kind of see here. That hill is probably about 12 feet tall on either side. So for centuries and centuries and centuries, the trace has sunken into the ground. Whereas when it was probably first made, it was up on that level there. But over time, it has sunken down to what level it is here. This is the Emerald Mound. This is one of the largest Indian mounds in the United States. It was built around 1200 AD and was used up until 1700 AD. A lot of people think that all Indian mounds are burial mounds, which is not true. When it has a flat top like this one is, it is a ceremonial or a structural mound where they had houses and temples and places of worship and things like that on top of it. The mound is the size of 6 football fields, is about 35 foot tall. And on top of it, there used to be 6 other smaller mounds that were used for various other purposes along with this mound. This is Loess Bluff. This shows you how the sandy soil is in this area that I referred to with the Sunken Trace previously. Now the wind back in the Ice Age blew the sand east of the Mississippi, and it ended up being about 30 to 90 foot deep in some areas, and in 3 to 30 mile wide strips of sandy soil. The further you get away from the Mississippi River, the less sandy the soil gets. So I stopped here at Mount Locust and actually have a ranger station here with a park ranger you can talk with. They got lots of little maps and some souvenirs and things like that, and I picked up a book on building of the Natchez Trace Parkway and some postcards about the area. Talked a little bit with the park ranger. Pretty cool little site here. And this is Mount Locust. What Mount Locust is a stand that was along the trace. It is the only remaining of 50 stands on the trace. Now you ask me, what's a stand? A stand is basically what we call today an inn, a motel, a hotel. This is a place where you get a place to stay at, maybe a warm meal, something like that. Now here at the back of the house, you can climb the steps here and see how this looks. Now this has been restored to pre-period correct of 1810, from my understanding. Like a little tool shed area. There's a bedroom area. This looks like the dining room area. And this is one of the bedrooms. You can actually go inside the house here. See another one of the bedroom areas with, of course, a fireplace, and back out onto to the front porch. And we can go in for the front porch here a little bit and go into the dining room and get a little bit closer look. Very cool stop here. Definitely hit this place up if you're on the trace. Now here's a fun fact. Why are these fences in diagonal angles like this? What's something you don't see in these fences? They have no posts. Lining the boards up in this fashion means you don't have to drive any posts into the ground and still have a stable, sturdy fence. Now on the back side of Mount Locust, across this field, there's a trail that leads off into the woods. And there's a slave cemetery back here we're going to go take a look at. This is the Mount Locust Slave Cemetery. There's only one unmarked stone remains. It shows here the names of people that are buried here in the cemetery. And here is that one marked gravestone. That's left today here at the cemetery. But there's about a dozen more throughout the cemetery here. And just to the left of Mount Locust is the family cemetery of the originator of the stand, William Ferguson, and his widow, Paulina Birch. The newest gravestone I could see in here is from 1934. So this walking path here that leads off to the left-hand side of Mount Locust is the actual Natchez Trace Trail. This is one of the original parts of the trail. As you can see, it goes off into the woods. Off into Mother Nature. And here's Coles Creek, a little picnic area, about 16 miles in. And one thing about the Natchez Trace is that it's very bicycle and motorcycle friendly. And speaking of bicycles, if you're having trouble out here, periodically they have these little tool stands that have tools to fix your bike Allen keys and wrenches and even an air pump. So that's pretty cool. Let's go back here and take a look at the picnic area. Now, there's over a dozen picnic tables in all forms of shade or sun, whichever you prefer. And you might be asking yourself, why is it called Coles Creek? Well, because Coles Creek runs right along the backside of this nice little picnic area. And this is the Mud Creek picnic area. Now it looks like at one time it was something fairly substantial. And from my understanding, there was a couple of picnic tables here at one time, but I don't see any more picnic tables around here. Now supposedly here off through the woods is Mud Creek, so let's go see if we can find the Mud Creek. So I'm not sure if this is the area or not. This is off to the right hand side of the parking lot. Nothing is marked out here. I'm gonna walk here just a little bit through this little grassy, looks like a trail or top of a hill here. We're gonna call it a trail. Let's see if the creek's over here. Well, I guess the creek is down the ravine down that way. And I didn't see it. Can't see it. I did find a deer hunter stand. So this is the North Fork Coles Creek little picnic area. There's two little picnic tables and a little fire ring. And a little view of Coles Creek. And here is Coles Creek at the bottom of a little trail. We're outside that picnic area. Got some pretty interesting grass here. I'm not sure what it is, but it looks almost like bamboo, but it's like a grass. I'm not sure, never seen it before. Anyways, if you head down here, just watch your step. The ground's a little soft, sandy and slippery, and also look out for snakes. And now we are outside of Port Gibson, Mississippi, which is about 60 miles south of Jackson here. We're going to take a look at the Sunken Trace. This is another section of the Sunken Trace that you can travel down. Like I said before in previous videos, with centuries and centuries and centuries of people walking and horses and buggies, this is what happens to the trace. It sinks down in the ground. Now down here, once you get into the trace, it actually splits off. So I'm not sure why there was a split. We're going to follow this trail back towards the parking lot, I believe. These hills are at least 20 foot, if not taller, above the trail floor. Very cool. Like I said, the sandy soil and years of foot traffic and horse traffic is what caused the trace to sink to the level that it's at today. And at the north end of the trail here leads you out to the current parkway, which we just pulled in here earlier. And you come back around to where the parking lot is. This is the Magnum Mound. The Magnum Mound is an Indian burial mound. It was used from approximately 1350 to 1500 AD. The mound was named after the farmer who found it on his land when he found human remains. In the 1960s, the National Park Service excavated it and found 84 bodies. I'm sure there's still some more in here, but they should just leave it alone. This is the Grindstone Ford trail. It's a short little loop trail. just the other side of the Magnum Mound. It takes you right here to the sign that says Old Trace. Look down that way is Old Trace. And you look down that way is the Old Trace. And just up the hill from the Old Trace is this old cemetery with some very old headstones. This one here is from 1854, and these two here are from 1852. And some of these out here you can barely even read the names, let alone the dates on these. Now we're going to take a quick little stroll down here, down the original trace here, to a point where there was a river. And across that river was the end of civilization, as that was where the Choctaw Nation territory started. So let's head down this way and see if we can find that point. Now this is something pretty interesting. This is a concrete wall that looks like it was maybe the start of a bridge of some sorts. As I'm in this kind of a low-lying area, I'm not sure if this is the bayou pier they were referring to, that once you crossed over the bayou, you ended up in Choctaw Nation. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is Bayou Pierre. Once you crossed that way, you were in Choctaw Nation. That was the end of civilization right here at this point along the Natchez Trace. Now, that concrete abutment that we just seen was right off over the hill there. And looking for the woods, I can't see where another one will be at, so I'm not sure if that was maybe a unloading point for barges or steamboats or what of that nature. There's no telling what that was hundreds of years ago. This may have been a larger river at that point. I'm not exactly sure. This is Owen's Creek. It's a little pull off the side of the road rest area. It's got a couple picnic tables and a trash can. But the main feature is just down there. Located about 25 or 30 yards off the trace is the Owens Creek Waterfall. So here we have a better look at the falls. It's probably about a 20-foot fall, maybe, something like that. If you look, it comes off the edge of a big rock basin. The parking lot being right there above it. The waterfall just falls off into this pool of water and makes its way down through the woods there. So if you need a peaceful place to stop and relax, you have your picnic there up top. You come on down here and listen to the water. And here we are at the top of the falls, where Owens Creek. It's right off over the edge. Well, I made it to Rocky Springs Campground about 5 minutes before the rain came. I hustled up and tried to get my tent out, but the bottom fell out on me. And right now my tent is out there, haphazardly put up. I just couldn't take the rain anymore and couldn't get my rain jacket out fast enough, so I'm gonna hang out here in the car for a while. Hopefully the weather should be ending within about an hour or so. Kind of gives me time to read one of my books and relax for a little bit. Hopefully the rain won't get too bad, and I'll get my tent put up and we'll see what happens from there.